Now, one of the things I've always had a great interest in is the collector's market, people who dedicate themselves to creating vast collections of wonderful things, wine, whiskey, cigars, watches, whatever it is. But one aspect of it which is extremely interesting and often overlooked is rare books. So we've come today to Dover Street to, I would say, the most prestigious of the rare book sellers. It's Peter Harrington. So we are now inside, and I'm here with Pom Harrington, who is the shops upon him. How are you?
Good, nice to meet you.
So, Pom, you took over the brand. I mean, you've been working since the 90s, is that right?
Yeah. So, Peter Harrington started in '69 with my father, and we're originally on the King's Road, Chelsea Antique Market.
Yeah.
And my father started with a market stall, and Chelsea Antique Market was the original and the first indoor antique market. Mm-hmm. Over the years, very successfully, he expanded with his brother at the time, and they were Harrington brothers. In '97, we moved away from that, and my father and I started Peter Harrington.
Okay.
And we started in the 100 Fulham Road, where we still have our main headquarters. Yeah. And then we started with 4 of us, and since then we've been growing.
Terrific. And the interesting thing, what we're going to be looking at today, is that there's a lot more than just books which Peter Harrington has in store. So obviously there is, I guess, a kind of broader antiquities role that you play. Is that right in the market, or is it books obviously are the main?
So the core of our business is rare books, and we deal books from Harry Potter first editions back to 15th century incunables. There are side bits to books that work with what we sell. So we'll look at today Winston Churchill. It's obviously a huge political figure that's very collected, and not just for what he wrote about, but also his objects and trophies around him. So we do have objects like that, but also artwork. We have original prints, which tie with books because they're printed. So we need things for walls. So we like original prints, and we do Andy Warhol or Banksy or various things. But the books are at the core of what we do.
And your passion for books stems from, I mean, clearly you have a belief in them in the kind of the cultural consciousness ultimately, but rare books, how did they sort of place in, or how should they place in people's minds?
So the reason why people collect rare books is they want to have the original version of what inspires them. That tends to be where people start. Yeah. It can be children's books you read as a child. Where did it originally come from? What did it look like when it came out? Or it could be the original text of philosophy, economics, or even grown-up literature. So a good example of this, I had a lady who was collecting, and she wanted to buy a first edition, an original of her favourite books. And it really went from Harry Potter to Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. And the goal is to try and find the book in the condition that the book was born in. What did it look like when it came out? In Jane Austen's case, in 1813, what did it look like? It was in 3 volumes, and it came out in these paper boards. That's what you aim for now. Yeah. There's variations of that. So, and that's very inspiring to people to have that, and it represents it represents what you are. You feel like these books inspired whoever you may be to where you are today. So that's how it starts. Okay,
you hear a lot about sort of designer bookshelves. People going to having interior designer who could kind of go out and curate a selection of books for people to have in their houses. This isn't really that. This is something a little bit more. Do you find that people buy one thing at a time, or do you think how does it work?
We've done it all, to be honest. We have done it all. We've had several projects ranging from, we have 50 meters of linear footage or shelving. We want beautiful 19th century library sets Nothing wrong with that. It's great. We have it. You know, you get the works of Charles Dickens in a beautiful leather binding with beautiful gilt work, Shakespeare, Jane Austen, and you can move into contemporary, more 20th century collective works, and that could include H.G. Wells or Arthur Conan Doyle. Absolutely works. We certainly do that. Then we've also had, these are my 100 favourite books. I want to have first editions of all of them. In some cases, the first edition might be a bit extreme, so what's the best we can get to it? And that's fine. We can go out and we can advise on that. And then it's really budget. I mean, you know, you can spend, you know, this to whatever. I mean, you can always tell the seriousness about the books is, do they spend more money in the library or more money on the books? Often we find sometimes they spend more money in the library than the book budget.
Yes, I think that's about right.
And Monk said the same thing about wine, but
well, interesting you mentioned wine, because I was going to ask where books, in terms of the collectibles market, and which is a market I'm fascinated by, because I think people, when they sort of define themselves as collectors, there's a real passion that comes with it, and rather than just something that's meant to be, I don't know, just a kind of, you know, something for the background noise of their homes or interior design. The collector market for something like whiskies, wines, cigars, watches, antiques, art. Where does books sit in that, do you think, in terms of the kind of as a niche?
I think books. I find of wine, watches, kind of a closer link. Mainly because you don't show wine in quite the same way that you say a piece of artwork. A piece of artwork is something that hangs on the wall. You know, someone walks into your home and it's a real showpiece. Books is very personal. You know what you have in your bookshelves, and you sort of notice it. Maybe you see the label of the book, and it reminds you why you have it. I think wine's quite similar to that. The same with watches. You can only have one watch at a time. But what's hidden behind closed doors, it's in your mind. So I find that sort of form of collecting very similar.
The storytelling collecting.
The storytelling collecting. I think that's, yes. I think, and the story behind the book, whether it's a great inscription, or in the case of a watch, the perfect condition. You know, how rare it was, how many were made, why is it so rare? You know, why is it like this? And
out of interest, is it a high maintenance thing to collect? Because obviously with things like wine and cigars, it's best that you keep them in very particular, climates.
Well, fortunately not actually. Books are really durable.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about, we're going to look at some books. We're going to look at a book in a minute, which is is 500 years old. Modern day housing is dry. The biggest threat to any book is water.
Okay.
So a burst water main is disaster, or burst pipe, or leaking onto books. That's your disaster.
So keep it on upper floors.
Well, you just need to make sure that. And the other thing is direct sunlight.
Yes.
It will fade, but that's no different from wine. But you can just pop it on the shelf and it'll be just fine. We do have custom made boxes, and we can look at one in a minute, which we do make for the books, and that really does protect it from the light and any sort of obvious water splashes.
Yes, absolutely.
And I can bore you with a story about actually we had a proper flood, and the books and boxes survived, and the books without boxes didn't survive.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it does offer quite a degree of protection. So, but simple. Once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
No one steals them, frankly.
Yeah.
The low maintenance. I mean, it's from that point of view very easy.
And certainly when a collector comes into somewhere like here, or let's just say here for sake of argument, the people that they're going to be interacting with, i.e. the people who work here, so obviously it's not necessarily just you every day, they're experts. It requires a real degree of scholarship to work somewhere like here,
Sure.
and knowledge. So tell me about the people who are, working here for you and for, on behalf of these books and the collectors.
So the commercial side of rare books, rather than say a library side, there's two different points that we look for. So a collector, going back to what I was saying, is really interested in the original condition, the story behind it, and condition is really important. And so the people that tend to come here are interested in the commercial side. They do get that. Most people come with most of the people who do the research are university educated, they know English or history, so that's their background interest. And then we will train them in terms of how to collate a book, how to research, how to check the bibliographical points to make sure how do you tell it's a first edition. So, and the people who get that, and we have ways of working that out, they really get it, they get excited by it. to have that thing. And then it's about research, connecting the dots. That book's inscribed to somebody. Who is that person? And then you can go and find out, oh, hang on a minute, they met on that day. Yeah. But he was involved with that book printing. You join the story. And that's quite exciting.
And do you have also people who kind of scour the world to kind of find and bring them in?
I mean, we do. So we exhibit probably 15 or 20 book fairs around the world each year.
Okay.
Ranging, we do 6 or 7 in America, but we also go Australia, Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi. This next weekend we're in Amsterdam. So we move around, and yes, we're meeting our customers, but also we get to see the locals, what they have.
Yes.
And we do buy. We do buy a lot in America and Europe. So yes, it's scouting as well as selling.
And I was going to ask what the sort of, the eye-popping treasures are that you have here, but luckily we've got them basically in front of us. So we're going to have a look at some kind of, not necessarily key items that define Peter Harrington, but a really great example and a varied example of the type of books that someone would find in here when they get here. So
sure.
Shall we have a look?
Yeah, let's have a go. Yep.
Super. So we're going to start off with James Bond. Inside is a first edition of a James Bond book, but before we open it up, this is a really good example of what you were talking about earlier, which is these cases that you create for books, which protect them beautifully.
Yes. So, in England we call it cylinder box, and Americans call it clamshell. Okay. So these are custom made, actually made by us, Chelsea Bindery.
Oh no.
So the Chelsea Bindery is something we started in 2000, and it's owned by Peter Harrington. Okay. And so these boxes are all custom made, and it's quarter Morocco, and we do this sort of gilt finishing, and the book fits. Nice and, yeah, exactly. And it closes, and that sits on the shelf, and will protect it from sunlight, transportation, which as actually the bookseller is quite useful because we do these fairs. Yeah. So it protects it perfectly from that, and water. That's the other thing, and fire in theory, but fire is low risk.
Keeping it aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah. So we do this with the more valuable books, and
this is one of those.
So this is one of those. So what makes this valuable? So Thunderballs. So this is book number 9 or 10 of Fleming. By this stage, he's popular, successful. They're printing quite a lot. Mm-hmm. So a typical first edition in this sort of condition. Now, we look for dust jacket. So a first edition without dust jacket, it's worth about 50 quid.
Oh, really?
60 quid, yeah. It's really not hugely valuable. So then you want the dust jacket, and then it's all down to condition. So we have this one. It's actually very beautiful condition, and that would sell probably for £1,000. Okay. What makes this copy special is that it's inscribed, and it's inscribed to Ian Fleming's good mate, which was Noel Coward, and I can just show you that. So
this is a gift from Fleming to Noel Coward.
And you've got Noel Coward's book plate, which is rather fun.
Oh, lovely.
And it says, to Noel, in exchange for the copy of P&C he didn't send me. P&C was Pomp and Ceremony, which was Noel Coward's only book. Okay. And obviously Ian making a little joke that he never sent him a copy. So here's a copy instead. So we can see it's a first edition, published in 1961. That changes it. So this is £32,500. Beautifully authentic.
So from £50 to 30.
Yeah, and that's all about story.
With two small changes.
And actually the condition as well. If this was in bad condition, it would knock thousands and thousands off. Yeah,
small nicks make quite a difference.
It does. Yeah, but combined with the inscription, so it's kind of the whole thing comes together.
Is that because the collector is so demanding, or is it because, explain that to me.
Well, go back to the first principles. You're trying to buy the book in the condition it's born in. Yeah. Fine. So you kind of hold that out. How hard is that book to get in great condition? Yes. So depending on that, depends on how much it can fetch. Then you've got how much is the inscription worth. And then you do get this exponential, sort of when the two payments come together. Yeah. So, for example, some people just care about the inscription, less concerned by condition. Yeah. There's not that many people. People do care about condition, but so therefore, most people who do like that condition, they wouldn't even look at it as in poor condition. Okay. Yeah. So the price really sort of stretches.
I got it. Okay. Super.
And that is not an extreme example. There are much more. Probably the most extreme example in 20th century for condition inscription would be Great Gatsby. Right. Okay. A copy without jacket can be honestly in poor condition. $1,000. Yeah. A beautiful copy is hundreds of thousands. A beautiful inscribed is hundreds of thousands, $500,000. Wow. all the same book.
Amazing.
So it just stands inscription and dust jacket and the condition of. That's the
I guess
because
it is in terms of uniqueness. So this creates a one-off Thunderbolt. I mean, there may be others that he's signed and described, but
it is. But Knockouts a good one.
Knockouts a very good one.
To have someone famous is fun rather than. Maybe an editor or someone can be a bit boring. People don't know them, but Knockouts.
Editors are terrible.
It's got this fun. It's got this sort of fun feel about it. So,
but it kind of narrows the funnel, doesn't it? Sort of in terms of like what's available, and makes it that much more special. So perfect. So that's James Bond done, and from James Bond to Winston Churchill. So we mentioned earlier about who the collector is, and of course we have these two items that we're going to talk about that are directly from. Winston Churchill, the provenance is with Winston Churchill, but it's from a very particular collector's collection.
Yeah. So at the beginning of this year, we secured the private collection from Steve Forbes, as in Forbes magazine.
Yeah.
And Steve was a big Winston Churchill collector. He amassed a significant collection of Winston Churchill items. He actually had to sell at Christie's about 14 years ago and sold some off. He was slightly disappointed. So he sort of stopped, and then basically we made an agreement with him to sell his collection for him.
Yeah.
So we've been doing that all year. There's a lot of stuff to get through.
Really?
So we started off with some of the obvious big books, and then more recently we did the catalogue, and we had some other objects relating to Churchill, which is quite nice because it ties in. We do more than just books.
Yeah.
And Churchill's famous for cigars, and Steve bought in '93 from Sotheby's. These 3 cigars, which were given to Winston Churchill's bank manager, Mr. Bull, who must have been a terribly patient man because Churchill was absolutely diabolical, always broke. And then he got lots of money. But that's where they came from. So the Bull family consigned to auction '93. Steve Forbes bought them, and they're now for sale as part of his collection.
And it's an interesting one here because the brand itself is Don Joaquin. And then obviously there was the revolution in the 50s, and then it was only in 1960 where the Cuban government nationalized the tobacco industry. So at that point, there were thousands of label brands in Cuba at the time. And then in 1962, Tabacuba, as they're named, the people who sort of run the tobacco side of the Cuban government, which is not, people think about Habanos, but that's more of a marketing arm. But Tabacuba brought it down from thousands to 25.
Yeah.
At that point, interestingly, the brands like Cohiba didn't exist. That came along in 1966. So having anything that precedes that with these sorts of brands, they're what's referred to as Prerevolution, and this one is such an example. I mean, this size here, this is what people might sort of see as a kind of typically Churchillian size. These are interestingly a bit smaller. They're sort of a kind of a Monty 4 size, and considering the age, they're in really good condition. I mean, this looks terrific. A bit of damage at the cap, but all that kind of stuff could be totally forgiven, considering where it comes from. And obviously, Church and cigars is a sort of, they're synonymous.
So and this is where provenance comes in. So at Peter Harrington, we do care about provenance, and we look at things like this. And here you have a letter or authenticity from Mr. Bull, whose family consigned it. And it says, this cigar was given to me on 20th February 1953 by the Right Honourable Winston Churchill, and he signed it Bull. And then there's a further note of provenance there. And then combine that with Sotheby's, Forbes, and now for sale at Peter Harrington catalogue, you've got great provenance. But things like that is really important, and it makes a huge difference to sort of needing imagination.
Yes, but for anyone interested in getting into cigars, these aren't smokable. Just FYI.
Well, they're tokens, and actually brings on the next object, which is also a real trophy piece.
Well, it's interesting because this is something that Churchill gave away, and what we're about to see is something that Churchill was given by a people.
It was. So he did a tour of Switzerland in 1946, post-war. He did several tours of Switzerland, and Switzerland were very grateful to him, and he was given in that time on separate occasions 2 or 3 watches by different manufacturers, and this is one of them, and it's been engraved in the back And actually, I haven't got my glasses with me. But basically, it currents it to Winston Churchill.
Yes, it says,
better.
Pardon my French, quelques citoyens helvétiques, which is some citizens of Switzerland, à Winston Churchill, témoignage d'admiration et de reconnaissance.
I'm going to do the cheat sheets.
September 1946.
I'm going to do the cheat sheets.
Yes.
Which was, dear Mr. Churchill, we take the liberty of giving to you, with this letter, a gold Kalidgoff wristwatch as a souvenir of your visit to Zurich and as witness of our admiration and gratitude. We ardently hope that this watch will record for you, your family, your country, hours of happiness, joy and prosperity.
Wonderful. And it's a gold case. It's Movado, which is still a brand that you can get today. It's an annual calendar, so you can get day of the week, date and month. And it's a really beautiful example, and wonderful to think that this was worn by Churchill and also given to him as a token of gratitude for what he'd done in the preceding several years.
But this is an example of where provenance and story really add value.
Yes.
So I think as a watch, it's probably worth $1,000 or $2,000, I gather.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
But there is a track record for Winston Churchill watches, and the only other ones turned up made £160,000. And this is £150,000, and it's all about the association.
Yes.
It's all about the memento of the great man. And having something collectible. And it's actually back to the original thing.
Yeah.
It's something of value combined with provenance equals an even bigger value.
Yes.
Cigars are fairly common, not too expensive ordinarily.
Yeah.
So there's a limit to how much further it can be. And there's more of them.
Yes.
So I think that's £12,000. The watch is super rare. There really is one or two that exist.
Yes.
So hence the difference in values.
But that's amazing because the pre-revolution cigars, if you're going to get them today, they get nowhere near.
Yeah, of course.
That.
It's all about the story.
Yeah, and also it's the 150th anniversary of Churchill's birth, I believe, this year.
Yes, it is. You're
and
right.
So quite timely that we are here talking about the great man and his stuff, and also the stuff he gave away generously to his banker. Yeah. So from one leader to another, we cross the pond, and it's JFK.
JFK. So. John F. Kennedy, he started presidency in 1960, and as we all know, he was assassinated in November 63. It was tradition in the White House. It started back to Roosevelt. The White House would produce a special book every year, normally limited to 100 copies, and the president would then give these out as Christmas gifts to staff and to other politicians and friends. In 1962, the Kennedys chose to do a book on the White House, which was Jackie Kennedy's pet project.
Yep.
And what she was famed for in her time at the White House, one of the things she did was restore the White House. And there's photographs of what she did here. So for 1962...
That's amazing.
Yeah, restored the collections and the Blue Room, and she catalogued the paintings and everything.
So did she probably edit this book?
This is her baby.
Wow.
So they bound up special copies. So this edition is 100 special copies, of which 93. And then they gave this out, and it says, to David and Susie with love from Jackie and then JFK. John Kennedy signed it there. And it's inscribed December 25th, 62, on Christmas Day. So David and Susie were quite interesting people, actually. So David was the British ambassador for the UK, and the UK ambassador in America.
Okay.
And he was Kennedy's best friend away from the American inner circle.
The set.
Yes.
Yes.
And he was the only foreigner really close to Jack, and they were great friends. When Kennedy was assassinated, of course, he was at the funeral. They had a special memorial in London for Kennedy as well, and very much the centre of it. What was quite interesting is later, Susie died. David's rumoured to have an affair with Jackie later on. Because allegedly they were lovers later on.
Really?
Yeah, and he proposed to her, and she turned him down. So that adds the extra story. Yes,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So, but it's inscribed by both Jackie and by Kennedy. So that's £25,000. And full of stories, full of history.
That's fabulous.
Full of twists and turns.
I love that. How fun.
I also like the fact it's signed on Christmas Day.
Yes.
Which makes it the perfect Christmas present.
Yeah.
I really like it. And I don't think we actually know, but whether they were actually having Christmas lunch together, which I think they might have done. They really were great friends,
That's
the two
lovely.
couples.
So this could have been a book that was given at the White House too.
Yeah.
God,
I mean, there is
amazing.
not to. I mean,
How
he was a
wonderful.
British ambassador, and they were really good friends.
Fabulous.
So
That's
that's
terrific.
a good story. We like that.
Right, for this final item, we need to stand, both because of its stature, but also out of respect. Now, I feel a little bit like this is sort of my Geoffrey Munn Antiques Roadshow moment, where we're going to do an enormously impressive reveal, because this truly is an extraordinary item that, I mean, just looking at it, you there's a sense of awe associated with it. It's got these wonderful metal clasps that keep it shut. But this is 500 years old, you're saying?
It is, yeah. So this is, it's known as the Claude Ptolemy Wurzelmüller, and it's a world atlas. And what makes it so important, in 1513, this is the first modern atlas to be printed.
Amazing.
Okay, so what makes it the modern atlas? The world in sort of pre this time was known under the coordinates and the geography of Claude Ptolemy, who was a sort of 1st, 2nd century Greek philosopher, and he got all his information from the Romans.
Okay.
So all this stuff comes in, and he works out coordinates of where everything is. And before they started printing, people would get these coordinates and join the dots, and you get these amazing maps that were done. And the manuscripts, and eventually, of course, printing starts, and they start printing these maps. And the first printed maps were done about 1477, all based on Ptolemy. And so there were multiple editions done, and they printed them in Rome, they printed in Strasbourg, and this is a Strasbourg printing. If you look here, you'll see names of places around the world. It's all in Latin, and literally with coordinates of where these places are.
How amazing.
Okay, so that's literally how the first geography books were published.
Yes.
It was just this text.
It was wonderful Greek.
But the information is 2,000 years old.
Yes.
Okay, to put context. Now what's amazing is we're going to go along there, because they start drawing the dots, and you get this. And this is actually the Ptolemy's map of the world. And really, this is the map of the world eye shot of what they thought the world was 2,000 years ago, the time of the Romans.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so this,
they haven't done too badly.
Not too badly, and he's sitting there in his armchair, if you like, collecting this information from sailors.
Yeah.
And they put it together, and they kind of got Africa and Europe and Asia. They know all this stuff. This is America, not found yet. This map is all way before that. So that's all Ptolemy, and they keep going. And the map maker, following all this information, is a guy called Wurzelmüller in Germany. But new information was coming. Christopher Columbus had been there, Amerigo Vespucci had been to America, discovered it. This information was coming in, and based on this new information, Wurzelmüller makes up a new map of the world, but including America.
Okay.
Now, the very true first of that is a wall map. There's only one known copy, and that's National Library of Congress, 1507. Actually, they only acquired it 30 years ago out of Germany. It was presumed lost. And it was like $10 million. Okay, so forget that.
Yes.
Finally, they print it in a book.
Right.
And we're going to skip past these ancient maps. So you've got all these maps around Europe, and that's France.
Look at that, that's
but this is all based on old information. And Wurzelmüller, I'm going to skip through, then does his very first map of the world with new information. And you open this up.
Oh, look, how wonderful.
And the world looks very different.
Yes, it does.
And it looks remarkably similar to what it actually is.
Yes, it has. Like, still, this is sort of like, the kind of fog of war kind of clearing, the stuff coming to light.
Basically
but it's not...
you've got the suggestion there is land out to the west, and you've got this sort of bit of land there and nothing behind it. You've got the Dominican Republic, because that's where Columbus landed.
Yes.
They've got that in there. And then the the top of South America, where Amerigo Vespucci went down to. So that's the information coming in. But by this stage, they've got fantastic information on Africa, Europe, and sort of India. And it's remarkably accurate. I mean, Africa really is kind of on the money.
It's almost as if it hasn't changed at all since we knew.
So that's the very first modern map to be printed in the book of the world. And you go through, and then I think you have 23 modern maps in here.
So it's the idea is that people could see the full world, and then these individual pages are sort of closer inspections of each area.
It's just new information. There has not been an up-to-date version of an atlas It's all based on 2,000-year-old information.
It's amazing.
Or that time, 1,500-year-old information. So this is a better map of what's there in the Caribbean islands. And, of course, it's not correct. This is the first impression. This is done within sort of 20-odd years of Columbus.
And what were the methods? They were just going with ship and just sort of saying...
They're taking coordinates. I mean, they take coordinates as best they could. Okay,
That's
so
amazing.
why is Walter Muller important? He's actually the guy that named America, and in that wall map in 1507, he prints America on it, and it's named after Amerigo Vespucci, who was the sailor who went down there. And that's how America's named it, and Walter Muller's the person who named it. So really important for American collecting. But then you skip on, and you do have all these modern maps.
Is that India?
Actually, that is Africa.
That's the South Cape. Okay, I see, yes.
You've got Cape down there, down to Cape Town, a place I'm very fond of. There's a modern map of Italy. And this is the first modern map of Italy to be printed.
That is extraordinary.
Very beautiful.
And also, is that the sort of the road systems?
No. Well,
are they rivers?
I think they're rivers, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can see they come off here.
And I'm going to show you one extra thing at the end. The other thing Walter Muller did, for the very first time, he printed a map. Let me just get my little tag. Dun, dun, dun. He printed a map in colour.
Oh, how
And that's the very first time a map is actually printed in colour. Beforehand, they would print it and then someone would colour the map sometimes.
Yep.
But this actually's got two tones of printing, one in green and red. So they would have done the
and a little bit off.
Once. It's like an early screen print. Well, it was an attempt.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, not like your modern day Warhols, which is perfect. So,
yes, exactly.
It's an attempt. So it's
but
the very first
but it's also
time.
the kind of the imperfection of it that makes it so special, because you know that it's that sort of, it's the rudimentary attempt at doing something like this.
And it dates it. Now, I mean, as atlases go, look, the book is rare. It's not unique because the definition of printed books is there were multiples done.
Yep.
And you can, this book does turn up. What makes this copy really special, and it actually honestly is one of my favourite books, I don't say that lightly, is actually the binding. A lot of the times you see copies of this book, it's had a history, bits have gone missing, so you sort of make things up and the book gets rebound or might be cleaned and washed. Amazingly, this is a survival story. That is the original binding. That is the 500-year-old original binding that this book has always been in, and that is rare. That is a once-in-generational copy. It is absolutely fabulous with the clasps and this pigskin over original wooden boards. It's pigskin, and these are wooden boards, and that has been clasped together, and that has sat in some ancient library for many centuries, not been touched. And that is why it's in such great condition. Someone's actually, I noticed up there, just written Strasbourg up there, which is where it's printed.
Okay, and dare I ask?
So, it's £1 million.
It really is my Geoffrey Munn Antiques Roadshow
it's
moment.
£1 million.
£1 million. £1 million.
And, there's not many books that, are £1 million. And we've had a few at Peter Harrington over the years. Like Shakespeare folios and things. But honestly, this is one of my favourites for the whole thing, which is about that binding together with the story about the first modern atlas. I think it's great.
It's one of those sort of, maybe it's the book, the antique booksellers sort of paradox, paradox is that you'd love to see it go, but you'd also hate to see it go.
Well, and I tell you, if I do my job properly, I'm going to send it somewhere where I might get it back again one day.
I see. Yes, it's very
good. You don't buy the books; you're borrowing it.
Yeah, I understand.
Temporary ownership.
Yes, absolutely.
And actually, when you think about it, it is temporary ownership. This book's 500 years old.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to be able to own this book for 20 years, you're a little bit, into the history of this book.
It makes up a small fraction of what it's been through. I love the.
But we regularly do get books back that we sold 10, 20 years ago for resale. I mean, it does. That's part of what we do. How we find books.
Yes.
Is the libraries come back.
Okay, so we can't call it a bombshell. We can say, I mean, this is a really monumental sort of antique. This is something extremely special, and it's why people come to places like Peter Harrington. And in fact, the point about Peter Harrington is that, forgive me for sort of putting statistics into your business, but I would say Peter Harrington has the broadest spectrum of these kinds of items of any bookseller in the world, and so, I mean, that is why people come to you for special things like this.
Well, they come to us because look, we're not an auction house, and the auction houses you're completely dependent upon what's there on the day, and you don't know if you're going to get it or not. So what we specialise as a shop is that we have extremely broad range of first editions, from early printed books like this through to a first edition Harry Potter, but it's all here in one shop, and there is no other shop in the world that has such a big range of collectible, valuable books that have been researched, guaranteed. In every book we have here, we catalogue our researchers, and it's, we make sure it's correct, making sure it's complete. So everything you buy here is correct. So that's something we put our name to, and you will not see a bigger choice anywhere in the world in one space.
And I mean, I guess perhaps this is sort of sits like the sort of star on top of the Christmas tree.
It really is, isn't it? It is. Well, you've asked me to produce one of my favourite books. And
I did. Really I did. And wow! I mean, and what a thing you've brought out. I mean, this is extremely special. So I appreciate your generosity in pulling it out of what I'm assuming is a very, very tightly sealed safe of cards.
A door within a door within a door.
Yes, exactly. But thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. And that's Peter Harrington.